Welcome back, everybody, to me being annoyed with the Wheel of Time. And today we stop being annoyed with Crossroads of Twilight. I just finished it, yeah, it's not as bad as I thought or feared it would be. So we're going to talk about the last couple of chapters. That's chapters 24 to 30 and a very short epilogue indeed. And then we'll see where things are going from there. So it's going to be a bit of talk about those chapters and a bit of like a general reflection on the entire book. And then I'm off for the weekend and I'll probably read a good book or two. We will see. I do have some ideas there. I got Hollow by Brian Cadling, who's the Vor trilogy I absolutely loved. Well, love is maybe the wrong word. It's something that really had a huge impact on me, is what I'm trying to say here. Might be do a reread and rambling at some point. Or I could read A Canticle for Leibowitz, because I just read Pavan last weekend, and Leibowitz kind of fits in the same kind of thing. We'll see. Maybe I'll also do the reread for Citadel of the Autarch, so I can actually, finish Book of the New Sun in a sort of timely manner. We will see. There are so many possibilities out there now that I'm free of Wheel of Time for a couple of days. And we'll be back with, Knife of Dreams on Monday, and we'll see if I can fit those, that entire book into 1 week. I hope I'll be able to, and that's sort of the plan. Anyway, let's get started, shall we? Well, cheers. All right, here we go. So, we get that one Rand chapter. Luckily, it's only one Rand chapter, and not exactly a super good one either, but, not a super bad one either. So I guess we're okay with that. And then we get Perrin things. Perrin things are actually really good this time around. And then we get a Matt chapter. And we get two Matt chapters, and then we get one final Egwene chapter with a bit of a cliffhanger there. And the cliffhanger itself is fine, but the rest is kind of dumb. So here we go. The Rand chapter is fairly simple. It's like those people show up. He sends Loyal, Davram Bashir, and Logain Ablar. He sends those three all to the Shanchan to see if they can make some sort of deal, like armistice or whatever, so they can focus on actually fighting what's the guy called? The Dark One. That's the guy. And yeah, most of it's about the idea of warders like Ashaman bonding Aes Sedai, and Rand's not very happy with it. This will be or remain a weird thing for the coming chapters, so I'll just mention it here. Rand says do a stop to it. Logan's you know what, maybe you should actually show up at the Black Tower from time to time, because everyone thinks it's your idea to bond those Aes Sedai, but it's really Mazrim times, and you might want to go and, I don't know, kick Mazrim time at some point. So we're seeing that there as well, and that's the big parts there. I think interesting bit is the aspect with Luce Theron Telemon, who is still in Rand's brain, talking to Rand, and they're having actual conversations and stuff, so it still remains to be seen whether Luce Theron is actually real or just a figment of Rand's imagination, which all falls into that whole question of how does this book deal with madness? And I'm still not convinced that it's doing a good job of it, because I don't know. It just rubs me the wrong way still. So, but nothing much new there. There's obviously the questions it was kind of clear that Loyal and that one Ashaman, whose name I've forgotten, were, sent out to all the steadings to talked to them. Now they're back meeting Rand and sent off on a new mission. We'll see where that is going. Well, I mean, we already know the Seanchan agree. That's like sort of the end of this book. And he has to meet the Daughter of the Nine Moons, which will be fun because we know that the Daughter of the Nine Moons is hanging out with Matt somewhere and not with the Seanchan. So, conspiracy? Possibly. As I said, like it's boring. I don't care that much about Rand point of views. Yeah. What else? Cadsuane is still manipulating stuff, but she's also apparently still trying to figure out whether she's okay with Rand making a deal with the Seanchan, I guess. But yeah, it's very much a filler chapter that doesn't add anything much new. It just basically gives us that information that will happen, like, you know, sending that that Rand's aware of what Mazrim is doing with the Black Tower and all of that. It's serviceable, but nothing much big, and it's really, I guess we could have done without that Rand chapter in the entire book, which would have made the whole thing more, like, in my mind, cooler if we would have like an entire novel without Rand showing up, because who fucking cares about Rand, really, at this point? So, let's look at something really good. Yes, there's something good in this book, and I want to point it out. And that is Perrin's part. Well, not all of it's good. There's other stuff in it that sucks, but we'll see. But the good part is Perrin moves to the town of So Harbor to buy food for his camp outside of that other town where the Shadow are holding and so forth. And that town is haunted. There's, people are seeing the dead walking the streets and stuff, and it's apparently happening. So that whole idea of seeing a ghost that we saw in that Elaine chapter earlier was just the first incident of that. And now more people are seeing it. And I just want to point out that that whole trip to that chapter, that whole chapter, or that more like two chapters almost, like the So Harbor chapter in particular. The whole trip there of Perrin and Berlain and gang showing up, going in there, talking to people, finding out what's going on. That is actually done well. I mean, it's not perfect prose or anything, but the atmosphere of dread or like threat and the creepiness of that place where people have basically given up all hope because they see the dead and they're like all like wrecked psychologically and whatnot. Robert Jordan is doing a good job there. It's literally, you just like take those bits out there. Like Perrin and gang showing up, having that event, like encounter in the bar with those grain merchants, going to the grain silos, going out, and all of that is handled well. Plus, even the part of like Perrin feeling sort of responsible or trying to figure out whether he should actually help those people or not. All to that point, this is really well done. Some of the best bits I've read in the entire series. I mean, there's a bunch of other parts, really, and yes, Robert Jordan, when he buckles down, can do horror. Like Mashadar in what's it called? Shadar Logoth is another bit where he's pretty good at like horror. Or like the wind, like in the waves, Machin Sheen. These bits are really good. Robert Jordan could actually write horror if he chose to do so more often. And yeah. Just want to point that out. That was just really, really, really well done. Now, obviously, we come to that point where then Perrin is told that it's not his responsibility to solve that problem. That's the job of that local lord. And gods, apparently my neighbors are destroying the place. I hope the sound is not too loud. Anyway, let's continue. The point is that Perrin is then told that it's not his job to solve the problem of So Harbor, and at the same time he's also then forbidding the Aes Sedai to actually do something about it. And I think that's where things kind of crumble for me, because on the one hand, Perrin is clearly feeling shitty about it, and everyone is like, no, you can't do this, you need to go back and, deal with the whole Fail Shadow situation and whatnot. And at the same time, he's not even allowing that one Aes Sedai to remain and do some stuff, while allowing his spymaster Bolver to stay there for a while longer. And like, it's sort of inconsistent. And the idea that, yes, to solve that problem is not his job feels hollow, because the argument is local lords have that responsibility. I have issues with that. Why do I have issues with it? Well, basically, the main problem there is that you say there's responsibilities for people, and if you see a problem that you can't solve for other people, or where you can't help, where you can help really, then you should not do that and just like leave it to someone else to do. And that's a viewpoint that I personally despise. It's like, no, if Perrin had any idea of what to do with that place, or look deeper into it, because there's clearly something wrong there, he should like at least maybe allow that Aes Sedai to do something about it, or investigate it more. And not listen to Berlain as like, it's the job of a lord to look after their people. No, fuck that. That whole idea of like, because it drives in the same like idea of like some sort of like good monarchy, where it's like you have that job, you're like responsible, father of your nation, that kind of crap. And it is absolute crap. It's like you see something you can solve, you fucking go and do that, and you help, and just it just like plays into that sort of like politics, and I just didn't like that aspect to it. But the rest of it, the horror in that town, that was just really well done. So yeah, good on you, Bobby J. You did something right. I'm very proud, and I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned how good that bit was. Now let's move on to the bad part, which is torture. Yes, they captured some people, and then they're tortured, and then, well, Perrin goes and chops off one dude's hand, and then afterwards is like thinking about like whether, I should have done that or not. And see, here's once again the problem. It's like Perrin doesn't feel good for doing that, and he hates torture, but he does it anyway. And it's that idea that I really hate when these books talk about torture. It is always about the fact that like sometimes that stuff's necessary, and then you need professionals to do that, or people that are hard and don't really enjoy it but are doing it, because at the end of the day, these books actually are in favor of torture if it's done by professionals, because it might actually be necessary and give us information. And I personally don't think that's a good stance to take. It just rubs me the wrong way to have that in there. Yeah. I don't know. It's not as bad as that whole situation with the Aes Sedai was, with Elaine and Avienda and the Aes Sedai was, but it's still... I sometimes feel it's very difficult to actually talk about that sort of like moral quandary and those issues around stuff like torture in a really good and sensitive way. And yeah, I don't think Robert Jordan is a well-versed enough writer to do that kind of thing justice. Mind you, I don't know how many writers can actually do it. I'm just saying he's definitely not the one. Alright, what happens next? We move over to Matt, who is traveling with the circus and is trying to court the Lady Tuon. And I don't really know where that whole thing is going. Because, see, it just feels weird so far. There's small bits and pieces. We certainly know that Noel, whatever his name is more than just an old dude. He knows all kinds of stuff, maybe invents stuff, but he drops the important bit of like a prophecy of the dragon about Matt and the Lady Tuon in some point. But the whole idea of Matt trying to court Tuon and how fundamentally he doesn't understand women is like, well, you fucking kidnapped her. And now the whole kidnap thing turns into maybe romance? Is this Stockholm Syndrome? Is it just Robert Jordan really likes to play with these kinds of things? I don't know, but the whole idea is like, yeah, talking to a woman is like fighting a battle. You need tactics and strategy. It's like, no, you don't. You fucking don't. Just behave like a human being and talk to people, and it might just be enough. Or maybe not. So yeah, we get all of that, and it just is sort of weird and annoying. It's like, oh. It just feels like the amount of time these books spent on dudes trying to get laid and hammering home how basically incompatible men and women are when it comes to communication is just annoying at this point. It's like we're like 10 books in. This is the end of the 10th book. We're like 2/3 through this mess. More about 2/3 through this mess, and we still spent entire chapters about like Matt trying to get laid. Sort of. While always complaining that she really isn't the kind of woman he really wants to have, because she doesn't have big tits, and Matt is very much into big boobs. I don't know. Also, apparently he just like drops talking to Aludra, and she doesn't bother about that. She just like shows up in the background so he knows she's still around and buying salt and stuff. It's like, nah. It just is frustrating at this point. Oh, but we got like another mention of how big Oliver's ears are, because of course we got that, because we always need to get that. And then like the big plot point is obviously that one of those three Suldam, one of those three Shanchan magic slave drivers, tries to stab Igyanan, who's still called Igin at this point, tries to flee. Matt has to follow her and kill her or order her death. And obviously everyone feels bad about killing a woman in these books all the time. Like, why? Look, this is fucking war. And the only person's like, you know what, Matt, you did the right job, is at the end of the day, the Lady Tuon is like, yeah, well... But I just hate that fact that, like, it's this old school chauvinism. Like, I'm a gentleman. I would never hurt a woman. Well, I probably would spank her, but I would never hurt her, like kill her. That's just fundamentally wrong compared to killing men, which I can do with no compunction, because men and women are fundamentally different. One of them deserves to be killed, and the other one deserves to never be killed, no matter what they do. And It just makes this book, and this is a book written in 2003, it just makes this book feel absolutely dated. Because there's no reason given. There's no, like, overall, I don't know, philosophy behind it or anything. It's just like all those people always hate killing women. And don't get me wrong. I think killing women is wrong. I think killing men is wrong. I just don't think there should be made any difference between the two. Or it should not be, made this obvious that they're doing this because they're good men. It's like, that's not how that works. And, it just makes both the author and the book feel much older than it really is. And And we've seen that like 3 or 4 times now. So we have that with Matt a couple of times before. We have it with Rand. I assume we would have had it with Perrin if he ever comes into that situation. But yeah. It feels like something that is very much personal opinion of Robert Jordan that he really needs to drive home for some reason or other. Which just adds to that whole idea that women are fundamentally different, that he, pushes through these books in a way. And, But yeah, mostly I'm annoyed by like the whole idea that like courtship is like a battle and you need to do all of these things and use it like a strategy because you will never understand your opponent. This creeps extremely close to all kinds of pickup artist language and stuff in a way, and I'm just sick of reading these things. I'm like, how did you ever manage to get laid, Bobby J? If this is seriously how you think men and women should interact. I don't know. Anyway, it's still like, apart from that bit, it's still fun, it's they're doing their thing. It's still mostly a fun adventure bit with Matt. So obviously he kills that one Suldam, comes back, and Tuon has sort of asserted her control over everything in his absence, and we will see where that will lead in the next couple of books, I assume. Still got 4 to go. All right, let's look at the last one. That's Egwene. And the Egwene chapter is weird. There's like 2 main things to talk about here. The first part of that Egwene chapter is her hanging out, with meeting and talking to all kinds of other Aes Sedai that you really never care about because they're all kind of bland and no one needs to know them or whatnot. And some of them are talking also about the idea of how to do the whole Ashaman thing, because another Aes Sedai has been killed using dick magic. And we already know who's the culprit there. But the idea is that if Aes Sedai are killed by dick magic, it will make it so much harder to actually come to any like compromise or whatever with the Warders, not with the Warders, like with the Ashaman of the Black Tower, and that's obviously the plan, because the Dark One apparently doesn't want any form of like communication with between men and women, or women and men. Especially not, and this is sort of the idea, because it's driving towards the plan of, yes, you know what, if we're doing this, we need to, because we still see this, it has to be us who has to have control, which is sort of what we saw yesterday, what Elida and gang, not Elida, but the Red Ajah is thinking about as well. So it's slowly drifting into that way where women have to be in control of that communication between men and women. And we already know that that is wrong, that is fundamentally wrong in, the eyes of, the world, at least the eyes of Bobby J and whatever he's trying to tell us with these books. So this will probably, we will see where this will go. And then we come to that final thing. Egwene does something stupid and gets kidnapped or, captured. Captured is the much better word, by the White Tower in Tar Valon. And this is where we reach the problematic parts, right? So first of all, they wanted to blockade the harbor of Tar Valon, which makes sense. They can't do it by sinking ships, because all those ship captains obviously don't want their ships confiscated and sunk. Understandable. So the really clever scheme that Egwene comes up with is to turn that harbor chain, that big metal harbor chain, into Gwendyar, because Gwendyar can't be destroyed. And I guess, depending on how she does that, it was never really clear how they, open or close that chain, but I guess the dumb idea that Robert Jordan has in the back of his mind is that once that thing is indestructible, it can't be opened from the inside. Now, we never got told how that chain gets open to let ships in or out in general. Is it just raised by, hoisted up through like a tower winch mechanism, like, what you would use with that kind of like harbor fortress fortification kind of thing? Because in that case, turning it into Gwendyar does do fuck all. Is it like they each time want to break one of the links to open the... It just doesn't make any sense to blockade the harbor by turning the chain into Gwendyar, is what I'm trying to say. Especially if you have people like Egwene, who has learned as a Domani to blow up all kinds of things. They could just raise rocks or whatever in that river mouth. They have enough Aes Sedai to do that, and even enough who could do earth magic. They could do all of that, but instead they choose this ridiculous thing that doesn't make any actual sense. And first she thinks she'll send Matt's sister, cousin, whatever, Boda Cawthon to do it because she's pretty good at it. And then, out of really weird and vague motives, she decides to do it herself. She rows out in a boat with gang. They changed that harbor chain into Quenya for whatever reasons. I mean, whatever good it will do. And then someone on the wall notices them down there, or knew already because she got told through fucking treachery. And they knock out the boat. They capture everyone. Egwene gets to drink the good old fork root that will make her stop being able to channel, and we end on this huge cliffhanger. We obviously also know from a dream that Egwene had in a chapter earlier that I kind of forgot, that the Shan-Chan will totally raid the White Tower, and she was trying to convince people about this dream, but no one was believing her because she's Egwene, and you know. It once again is very much, it feels forced. Because the whole idea with the chain is already ridiculous. Yes. And the whole motivation to go and do it herself and not let someone else do it comes sort of out of the blue, and I don't get it. So I guess the reasoning behind it that Robert Jordan is trying to set up is the following. Nicola Treehill, the one that we spoke about making no sense whatsoever because, you know, has fled because she was pissed off by the way she was treated by everyone, which you kind of get, right? And it's not like, you know, other people haven't done things like that before either. And obviously her gang, her fellow novices, kind of shut up about it and didn't tell anyone, so they find out late. And one of the Two Rivers girls is part of that group that didn't say anything. So they all get punished by, you know, being spanked because, no, well, more like whipped. Someone's talking about the strap there. All right, so they get like the usual consequence for any wrongdoing in this world. They get hit on the backside because that's what this book is about. And yeah. Egwene kind of feels bad about it for whatever reason. I'm not quite sure what the reason was, but, you know, she feels like, how can I do that to someone who is was my childhood friend and so forth, which you kind of get. Then apparently we're supposed to think that to atone for that, because she can't show mercy to that woman, she decides to not risk the other one whom she has sent to do that kind of thing, rides out and does it herself, and that's how she gets captured. And that doesn't make any sense as fucking motivation. It's like, if you want to build that up, then please add some bits more in on how sending Boda Coffin out there is super risky and whatnot. And you never build that up. It feels very much like and this is once again where I think the book is has bad editing. It's like, if you have an editor, that editor should go over in the other room and tell her husband, Bobby J, dude, add in a couple of lines more on how that thing is super risky that they're planning. Because you don't get anything told about that until she's there and doing the thing to the chains. Like, maybe add some information on that to make sure why Egwene is feeling bad and decides to do that. That needs to be cleared up, for fuck's sake. Because otherwise, it feels more like I need to get Egwene in danger, let me come up with something ridiculous. Which is it exactly what it is at this point? And I'm like, no. Well, there we are. It's what we got this time around. So yeah, Egwene's captured, possibly by treachery. The harbor chain is now unbreakable, which may or may not blockade the harbor. And the Shan-Chan will probably raid the White Tower next book. Because, I mean, this is also the end of the book. Yeah. I still really don't like the whole Arangar plotline, storyline. I think it's hugely transphobic, but yeah, there we go. Might be a point for a different video. We will see. Let's look at the whole book, in general reflections and whatnot, right? So, yeah, I kind of liked it, mostly. I mean, by which I mean I did not hate it as much as some of the others. In general, this is sort of what everyone calls the slog, and a lot of people were warning me about it, but you know what? Last couple of books were pretty nice, especially this one, because We didn't focus on Rand, who is clearly the problem of this book, of these books in general. We got some actual adventures, and as soon as we get adventures, Robert Jordan doesn't have as much time to, drop all kinds of egregious statements about politics, gender roles, race, and whatnot, and that generally is really good, because when he focuses on adventure, like with Matt and fleeing and whatnot, or with Perrin, when he focuses on horror, like with that whole So Harbor storyline, he's a decent writer. He's serviceable. He can do that kind of stuff. And yeah, that works really well for me. So not having Rand about all the time, and not having too many egregious things to that, rubbed in all the time, and some fun adventure-y bits and pieces was entertaining. It was solid. I mean, does it make the whole thing a must-read? Of course not, but at this point, I'm settling for fairly decent, because it's probably the best I'm gonna get. And I hope we will continue in that, direction. But I am not too hopeful. I guess I'll find out more about it next week. We'll do Knife of Dreams next week, and that's the last Robert Jordan one. And after that, it's Brandon Sanderson. And we'll see if having a serviceable craftsman instead of a really underqualified writer finished this story will actually improve things. I remain curious is what I would say. Anyway, that's sort of it. More of the same. Some really cool elements there. A bit of horror. Robert Jordan should do more horror. And then some annoyances and really bad plotting because, yeah, this could have been done much better in a lot of ways. Anyway, not as bad as some people make it out. I hope we'll get sort of solid books in the future. Anyway, see you around. Have a great weekend. I'll try to post some videos on good books. Maybe you'll be interested in those. And then we'll do more Wheel of Time on Monday. Have a great weekend. Cheers.